This is my version of Chevy Apache. You know what I mean? This is my creation. You know. Mark Salinas, San Antonio, Texas. I'm also the owner of a Lowlife clothing company. Very first time I saw a car, like someone, like something that caught my eye was my dad. He had a 50, it's actually a 58 Chevy Apache. We have pictures of, me and my sisters and brothers playing on it. That time it snowed like in 1980. We have pictures with it. But yeah, I guess that was probably the first like car or truck that caught my eye, that truck has always been in our life, always. My dad didn't build trucks. He was we were brought up probably like I guess lower middle class. It was a family of 6. As far as I remember, my dad was always like hardworking. He's always working, and I talked to him, and like I remember like he had the truck. I remember him like swapping the motor out and just trying to get it to work because he needed to get to work. That was his main transportation, And as far as like customizing, he always tells me, man, dude, I see you, and this is what I wanted to do back when you were kids. I just could never afford it. And it's like, cool, man. Like, and to me, I'm like, oh, that's badass. You know what I mean? Because no, the first vehicle I think I ever drove was my first car, which is not like extravagant or anything cool. It was a 91 Toyota Camry. Had a sunroof and it had 4 doors and it drove. So, oh, and it had AC. Shortly after I had that 91 Camry, I'm like, this isn't that cool. You know what I mean? It just wasn't cool. I sold that and I actually bought a 55 Chevy pickup. Mom was pissed. She was pissed because they had gave me that car, and I traded it and the truck ran. It was all beat up, dents all over it. I think it broke down and I didn't have the money to fix it. To me, I thought that having an old car was just making it run. I didn't see anything like I saw it as that, like, oh, I'm in an old car. This is cool, it runs. It's badass. After that broke down, obviously I was like 16, 17 years old, I couldn't afford to fix that thing up. We sold it and I bought a Honda Civic. That was about the time I got a job and I was working. And I went up to the Sonic up here, and there was a guy there who had a lowered Civic, and I kind of just like, whoa, that's pretty badass. I have that same car, like that thing's sick, I kind of went like crazy with it. That's my personality. Every time I do something, I just want to be like, I'm just on it, like just, man, that's all I want to do. I got that car and swapped it, put a B16 motor, right away. It was like the thing, B16, boom. Yanked the AC out. I was like, oh, screw the AC. I don't care. That's not cool, And that was one of many, that was my first one was a 95 Civic. I painted it myself, everything. Didn't know how to paint. I remember when I traded it in, I traded it into a local car show, or not a car show, a car dealer here. And he asked me, hey, man, like they're pretty much gathered around me and they're looking at the car, and I was traded in for an SI they had, and I was like, hey, you take trade in? He's like, yeah. Well, I brought the car up, it had a swap and everything. And when he came up, he touched the paint and he's like, damn, dude, you spray this with a texture gun? I'm like, what? Like, totally insulted me. And I'm like, what the hell, man? And ever since then, I was like, man, I'm gonna learn how to paint. And sure enough, man, within like that year or like 2 years later, shit, I was painting everybody's car, man. I mean, me and my buddy of mine were painting people's cars and doing swaps, and it was badass, man. It was a fun time. I started doing the family thing. That's when me and my wife had already been together, and we kind of got back together. And started dating, so that's all I wanted to do was like, oh, I just want to hang out with my new girlfriend and this and that. After we were together for a while, I started getting into motorcycles. That was kind of like, that was awesome, but I just didn't have anybody that I could share that interest with, I was doing it, and we had, at the time, I had my oldest and my middle child were around, and I would do that like kind of off and on and come out here. I built this garage for that. Like I was painting motorcycles, and I would buy and sell, flip, use that money to build, to fund my build. And after I built a couple motorcycles, I'm like, this is cool, but I have nobody to ride with. I was always by myself, I never found that group of people to gravitate towards or share some kind of interest, I guess we went to Lone Star Roundup And after going there, I'm just like, dude, like I can do this. You know what I mean? I've always been into old trucks. So keep in mind that 58, it's always been, my dad's had a 58 for as long as I can remember. And I wish I could say that this one was it, but it's not. You know what I mean? He sold that probably in late 90s. He sold it. Came into hard times, sold it. But the Lone Star Roundup, where it's all started, man. I would say maybe 2010. I went and I saw a couple trucks, and I'm like, dude, this just blew my mind. Like I had seen many trucks lowered, and I was like, oh, those are cool, you know. But to see an old classic truck, I never saw an old classic truck. I mean, to me, a custom classic truck was, you know, center lines, like Camaro clip, paint job, and that's it. Like, oh, that's badass, you know. 350 motor, oh, that's cool. That's what I knew. I think it was like the third Roundup, maybe like 2013. Yeah, 2012, somewhere around there. We go, and I tell my wife, man, all my clothes is always jacked up. Whether it has holes in it from welding. Like these pants are new, and look at that. They're just jacked up, man. All my clothes, right? I'm like, I want to get some new shirts. I want to buy some shirts. Well, we go, and I'm like, man, I don't see anything I like. I just didn't see anything that appealed to me or something that I would, you know, when you buy something, you're like, oh, that's cool. I would totally, that's me. I would wear that. I didn't see anything like that. Lowlife came around. We set up we did a couple designs. Luckily for me, my brother's a designer. He designs a lot of stuff. He owns his own design company here in San Antonio. And he was all for it, man. He's like, dude, let's do it, man. I could totally get you set up and come up with ideas. I'm like, yeah, you know, everybody thinks, oh yeah, just come up with these ideas. It's so easy. Just come up with ideas, put them on the shirt. Yeah, man, it's gonna be cool. And it was, man, it was cool, but it just wasn't as easy as I thought. You know, people always ask me, oh, I want to do a t-shirt company. I said, cool, man, do it. I just tell them do it. I don't want to, you know, discourage you from anything. But when we did it, I didn't know how much to print. That's one thing. Like I didn't have any help saying like anyone I could ask like, hey, how many shirts should I print? How many, you know, this and that. But we just printed a couple shirts and we set up a Lone Star Roundup. And I had just discovered Instagram and we posted it up. I think it had like 100 followers, something like that. You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, man, 100 followers. We posted up and man, it did great. People bought it up and they loved it. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool, man. We sold out on the first time we went. I mean, we made small quantities. Like I said, I didn't know how much to make. When we're doing Lowlife for the second year, we were doing Lone Star Roundup. That was our big show for the year. And that's all I wanted. Initially, like I just wanted it to be like just for hot rodders, just for pre-65. I had that mentality, like it's got to have that old school. You know what I mean? We did it, but at the time, like I did this shirt. It's right here, the hand built, and that shirt, man. A lot of the shirts we do mean a lot to us, man. They're like it's people who build and people who are in the scene don't understand. Like that shirt, I remember I was printing all our shirts. And then on our free time, I would come out. I'd print. I wake up early. I always wake up early. I wake up like about 5 o'clock. I wake up at 5 o'clock, start printing till about 10, 11, you know. And then I would come outside and work on my trucks. Well, that time I had was moving my transmission and I smashed my finger, broke my nail. And shortly after that, I cut myself with a die grind with a cutoff wheel. And I was in the middle of that, just to print hand, say hand, you know, it said, I think it was, I wanted it to say handmade or so, I don't remember. I drew it up. And my brother, we got together and he's like, hey dude, that's a cool deal, but let's make it more real. I'm like, well, it is real. And he's like, well, dude, look at your hands, bro. Like they're all cut up. He's like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do something for you. So he made the hands with the cut in it and with the broken nail. At that time, that shirt was like, I was like, dude, this is awesome, man. Like, this is my shirt, man. Like, this is mine, you know? And we sold the hell out of that shirt, dude. Like, people love it. To this day, I want to retire it. And, you know, I don't want to just keep putting out the same stuff, but people ask for that shirt, you know? It's one of those deals. I mean, our newer stuff is, it's a little bit more mainstream and it's evolved, you know, just like me, you know, I've evolved in builds and everything at one time is going to evolve, you know. I found this truck on OfferUp. I was looking on Craigslist. I've always been on Craigslist. I wake up early, 5 in the morning. I'll just jump on Craigslist. I'm looking for a 58 big back window. Keep in mind, this is my second one. The first one I built, I kind of didn't have an attachment to it because it had a small window. Nothing wrong with small window. I just wanted to be that guy. Oh man, you know, there's certain things about vehicles that you want. You know, for me, it was going to be the fleetside bed, big window, and the trim. The trim was a big deal. But this truck, I found it, and it was actually a 55 Chevy. I bought it on OfferUp, and the guy, it was weird. Like, I show up, and the guy puts it for sale, and we show up, and then he's like, oh, I don't really want to sell it. I'm like, what's going on, man, you know? But I winded up talking to him, and we got it. I brought it home. It was a 55 Chevy pickup, and it was in pretty terrible shape. I believe the only thing on this truck that I've used from that was the frame and the cab and one door. That's the only thing from that truck I used. And I winded up having to buy, I tell people, everybody's asking me, like, where'd you find this truck? You know, and it's 5 trucks in one. For some reason, I was having a really hard time finding the 58 part. That's the thing with the old school builds, man. It's not like, you know, I'm learning it now with the C10 I'm building a Blazer, and those parts you can just get online and you can just order them up. It's awesome, you know. But with the 58, man, like just finding that door, the passenger door, it was terrible. For months, I couldn't find one. So then you just start getting parts that's the thing with the old school rides, man. You make them work. I ended up going with the Scott's Super Slam kit in the front. I picked it up. I talked to those guys. A buddy of mine has a Scott's front end. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, he goes, take it for a drive. I took it for a drive and I was like, dude, this is nice. Has independent suspension. Kind of basically a Mustang 2 on steroids, you could say, you know. It was about maybe 3 months before LST, and man, I'm good friends with Chris Vinton and Xavier Vinton brothers, man, and they helped me out a lot, man. I met Xavier back when I had my 52, and you know, he kind of talked to me like, hey, you bagged that truck? I'm like, yeah, thinking I'm badass, like, yeah, I built this, man. It's all hand built, and I did it all in my garage, which I did, but I didn't know the extent of those guys. Like, when I go to their garage, I'm like, oh, okay, these guys are doing this way before me, you know what I mean? But it was good meeting them, man, because, you know, building these things, it's always good to have friends and everybody's input. Well, the first 2 trucks I built, man, I was a loner in that, man. I just built it, got online, and kind of looked at stuff and like, oh, okay, I just did it, you know. But on this build, it's special, man, because like I had friends come in and help, you know. Xavier helped me on the tubs. He knocked it out of the park, man. The fender tubs are like, came out good. He's like, you're not gonna leave it like that. I'm like, no, maybe I get some slosh tubs. And I'm like, well, it's really gonna take away from the budget, you know. He's like, well, you can build them. It's not that big of a deal. So he helped me, man, and he built them, and he built that, and he also did the bed. He did it all metal. He's like, you sure you want it all metal? I'm like, yeah, man, that's cool. Let's just get it done. So he finished it, and he stitched it all in. Of course, I rhino-lined it, and I finished it off. But when I got it back, I looked at it, and I was like, man, it looks cool. It doesn't have that classic look, you know? So I wound up blowing the bed apart, actually just the door. And I'm the one that put the wood in it, you know? I made a frame for it, and I rebuilt it. And then he was like, he came over one time, and he sees my welding table. He's like, hey, dude, that's a nice welding table. And I'm like, oh shit, that's the door he built me. I cut it in half, used it as a weld, repurposed it pretty much, you know? Yeah, those guys helped me out a lot in this, man. And a couple of other friends, my friend James Ellison, I met him just through Craigslist, man. He came and bought a rear end for me. And he's the one who got me to the LS game, man. Before I was just 350 all the way. Like, I didn't care if it was fast. As long as it ran, started every time, I was happy, you know. He got me into LS stuff, man. He says, on this bill, I had sold my other 52 to fund this one. So I had a pretty, you know, decent amount of money after paying bills, and I had enough to build another truck. And he goes, dude, let me build this motor for you. If you let me build it the way I want to, I'll do it for you, you know? I'm like, cool. You know, I wound up buying a 6.0, put a Texas Speed cam, and running a built transmission on this thing. I think it has a 3200 stall. I mean, it's bulletproof, man. I drove this recently. We went from here to Dallas, and like I had people ask me, you gonna trailer it? I said, no, man, we're gonna drive. And that was the thing, like with that group of friends, everybody drove their shit, man. Everybody drove their cars, and it's a group of like probably 10 people. And the first year we went to Good Guys, man, we went in a regular car, you know, and we were like the odd man out, like everybody. I'm like, man, this sucks. So this year, man, I got to join the posse, you know, and we all drove, and shit, I'm cranking AC and going 85 miles the whole way to Dallas, man. It was awesome. Me and my wife went. That's another thing. I had to have AC. My wife was like, all my other trucks didn't have AC. And she's like, if you want me to drive in that truck, make sure you put AC. And I'm like, done. I had already done all the front, cleaned all the framed up, boxed it up, blasted it. I did so much body work on this thing, and it was winter time. It was winter in Texas, it's like not that bad, but sometimes it gets bad. For us, anything under 40 degrees, I'm just like, done, I'm out here doing body work, and I was just burned out, man. Just super burned out on the truck. I'm just like, every day hitting it. My hands are sore from printing, from sanding. Anybody that's worked and done body work or any kind of fabricating, your hands just get worn out, man. I remember laying here and like I was underneath the truck, and I sat back and I looked at the truck, and I'm just thinking, this is never gonna get done. It's been 3 years. I'm usually building these things like 6 months. I mean, I was working fast. This is not me. This is taking me forever. And that's where our other shirt came. Dream, build, cruise. Dream it. Everybody when they build something has an envision of what they're going for. And I already pictured this truck. The way it came out is exactly the way I picture it. Everybody has different styles, and this to me, this is just me, man. Like rough around the edges, like it's not perfect. It's good enough for me, I'll get messages every now and then, like this isn't a real lowrider, and I'm like, I don't know how to respond to that because I don't consider myself a lowrider, Yeah, I may take lowrider influences, like Supreme stuff, and like I just like the style, and it all comes hand in hand. It's all custom. When it all comes to it, mini trucking, anything custom. I wanted a Patina truck so bad, dude. And I had found two that were like almost. There's a fine line between cool patina and just junk. And the ones I were finding were just toast, man. I found one that was like, oh my God, I saw it online. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I go and it's just like there's no coming back from it. You know what I mean? From a fabricator's point of view, there's no coming back. It is what it is, and that's all it's gonna be. This one, I said, you know what, man, I'm just gonna keep on building because I was burning time looking for this freaking unicorn, I got this one, I started just building. I said, you know what, I sandblasted everything, which was a bad mistake. I sandblasted and it just opened up a whole can of worms, But I'm glad I did it because it's built right and it's rust free. I made it, I painted it like that. People always say, man, that's in good shape, dude. That's in really good shape. Where'd you find that at? It's a barn find? I'm like, yeah. I just kind of play along with it, like, yeah. But I painted it like this, man. And to me, like painting stuff, everyone's like, oh man, you just pretty much painted it and scratched it up with sandpaper. I'm like, I mean, literally, yeah, I guess you could see it that way, but man, this paint job took forever, man. It had to look right. It did. I didn't want it to look like a freaking cow going down the freeway where it's just blotched. You know what I mean? To me, that's not cool. Like it had to have that perfect tone. And man, it took me probably 3 weeks to paint it. Just off and on, I would spray it, just and take it off, take off. And it's funny because I took that the brown. I actually took a panel to the paint shop. And they have a gun that just, they sample it. And I took my rusty panel, and the guy looks at me like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I want rust color. And he just looks at me like, okay. I didn't really get into it. I was like, okay. So he matched rust color. So that's my undertone. As you can see, like brown. Actually, I sprayed black, brown, and then blue. And then I came back. It was just a series of layers. And I think to me, it came out perfect. That's the way I envision finding a truck. Like, I don't think you'll ever find a truck that looks like that naturally. I mean, they're out there, but I don't think I'll ever find one, But yeah, that's the style of the truck though. Like I still wanted the old school look. And it's funny because I'm a 15-inch guy, dude. Like 15-inch wheels and Kragers, whatever, Like I'm happy with that. When I started meeting with Chris and them, they're like, oh man, you need to get into the big wheels, man. You ever try bagging something with big wheels? That was another obstacle. I'd never bagged anything with big wheels. But man, dude, when you're in that truck and you're cruising in a nice day like this, jamming out, and it's like a form of meditation, I guess, for yourself. And you get it, and you go to a show, and people appreciate it, and you're like, damn, that's cool. It was worth all the bullshit, It was worth it, man. And there's only so many people I trust, you know what I mean? I'm one of those guys that I want to do everything myself so I can take all the credit. Man, I was beyond that. When you do a build from ground up on these vehicles, man, it just takes a toll, man. Like I was just like, at that point, I was willing to take any help, Chris asked me to do the forward link. I'm like, shit, yeah, do it, man. So we loaded him on a trailer. He took it. And then he asked me, hey, dude, you want to put your name in it? I'm like, yeah, dude, let's do it. Put Lowlife and the Y link on the back. And I just set it off, man. I was like, oh shit, when you personalize something like that. I mean, first off, with seeing your truck on the ground and seeing it come together, and then when you see it personalized, it's like, dude, that's what it's about right there. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you've seen my tailgate. That's another shirt. Before in the build of this truck, like when I first built this truck, I had a fleetside Chevy, fleetside Chevy shirt. It's the back end of a truck, and it says Lowlife in the tailgate. The tailgate was a big deal, man. And I told my wife, I'm gonna make this shirt, and I'm gonna build my truck around this shirt. My truck is gonna look just like that. Big window, fleetside, trim, Lowlife in the tailgate. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I came up with these ideas. I can't bead roll. I don't know how to bead roll. So I find a guy. It's Spartan Designs up in Arizona, and I reach out to that guy, and he's like, man, he's all for it, dude. He's like, yeah, let's do it. And sure enough, man, I gave him dimensions, and I threw him a font that I wanted, and I measured it. He measured it a bunch of times, send it off to him, and within like a week or two, man, he had it back to me, and I was just like, dude, this is gonna be sick. It's gonna be over the top. So I had a tailgate there. I cut it out and welded it all in, stitched it all in, body worked it. And yeah, man, I get so like people still is that they go up and they touch it. Is this a sticker? I'm like, no, man, that's real deal, man. And that's one of the things that sets this truck apart, I think, is like the little detail stuff like that. Also like the grill guard. I got so much shit about that grill guard, like, oh man, that's terrible. Take that off, But there's more to it, man. I bought this truck on a mule farm, I found this truck on a mule farm, and that it was on there. That's an actual accessory from 1959. It's a smash hit bar, from Waco, Texas. And I thought it was the coolest, man. And my other truck, I had the same bar, but it was for a 52. And I'm gonna rock this thing, man. I haven't seen nobody rock one of these, Like painting or welding, no one ever taught me. It just kind of one thing I just got in, I just did it. You know what I mean? Like I always tell people that, like, oh, I want to learn how to weld. I want to learn how to do this. I say, man, what's stopping you? Just do it, man. I don't know. It's like almost like surreal, like thinking like how many people have reached out and how many people we have met, through the Lowlife. It's crazy. Going from a hot rod scene, and just in San Antonio, I really stuck around here. And the only time we ventured out was going to like Lone Star Roundup. Well, after meeting Chris and Xavier, man, we really you started venturing out. We went to like Tex-Mex and started doing the mini truck shows. And man, I just didn't think there was I like how everybody they all talk, man. Everybody, it was real friendly at first. I was kind of hesitant to get into the mini truck scene. I'm like, and Xavier's like, dude, what are you worried about? We all have old schools too. And I'm like, man, I didn't realize how much people like I'm saying, it's just all the same culture, man. What's funny? I hear a lot of the stories, and they're like, man, my dad used to. I remember being outside, my dad doing hot rods, owning a hot rod shop or racing, this and that. And I was kind of talking to my wife about it, it's funny, my story's a little bit different. I'm kind of like, I wouldn't say a late bloomer, but I kind of, explain. She tells me, well, dude, you're that guy. You're the guy that our kids are going to be talking about. You're the guy that when my sons get older, they're going to say, I remember seeing my dad bring home this Chevy and just bagging it and this and that, you know what I mean? And I mean, that's pretty cool. When she said that, I was like, you're right. Like I'm starting it from here, I don't think something like this ever ends. It just gets passed on, Thank you guys for watching. You're watching BuiltToCruise. If you like, subscribe. Also check out their website, BuiltToCruise.com. So bagging this one with big, I mean, they're not that big, they're 20s, but I keep them clean. You know what I'm saying? BuiltToCruise.com. Yeah, it's like BuiltToCruise.org. No. And then we have these guys. These guys take up all our time. This is a shop dog. She's always out here. I just learned it, man. Like I don't know how many people ask me at shows and stuff like, man, your truck's cool, and I'm like, oh, thank you, I appreciate it. How did you get into welding and how did you get into painting and all this stuff, right? And I'm like, I always think like, I don't know, man. I do remember buying a welder. I bought a welder like on Craigslist, like a Hobart welder 140, and I was in my front yard just welding. I had flux core and I was just, just welding on some metal. And luckily for me, like my neighbor, 2 houses over, I guess he heard me just going to town, and he comes over and he's talking to me like, "Hey, dude, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm learning how to weld. You know, I wanted to learn. I really wanted it." He kind of gave me some tips, show me, tell me, oh, but you need to buy a gas setup, and I got a bottle, and he set my gauges, changed the wire to solid core, started welding, and dude, that was it, man. After I started welding, it was just like on, dude. I was welding everything. The whole interview is like right here. It's the beard that talks. Again, I'm Mark Salinas from LowLifeCo. This is my wife. She has a big part of the company as well. If you see anything you like, hit us up on lowlifeco.com.